Hold up. Wait a minute. I wish you love, peace, and hair grease.
Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.
Yeah, you know we're shooting straight from the hip.
This is Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Critic, and I shoot straight from the hip.
Yeah, you know we're shooting straight from the hip.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Carla Renata. I'm back. I am so sorry that I wasn't here last week, but I promise you I have good reason for not being here. But let me just fill you in on where I was. But before I do that, I am Carla Renata, your host, and you have tuned into the Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. I have a plethora of guests and interviews and things tonight. So I'll get right into it. But if this is your first time joining me, if you are on YouTube, give me a big thumbs up to let me know you are here. Click that bell for notifications and subscribe to the channel because you never know who you might see here. Sometimes it might be one person and sometimes it might be 25 like it is tonight. It's a lot of people on the show tonight. Hi, Kenneth Williams. Hi, Brandon. How are you doing? Oh my God, I have so many people on the show tonight. Okay, so let me tell you what I was doing last week. Last week, the reason I wasn't able to broadcast live is because I'm the co-president of the Critics' Choice documentary branch of their documentary branch. So the Critics' Choice Association Documentary Awards were last week in New York City on Sunday, November 13th. And I was there dealing with that. I'll show you some pictures a little later. But I was dealing with that. And then a friend of mine named Teresa Page is the Broadway producer of a show that just opened this past week called And Juliet with the ampersand, Juliet. And I went to see that. And I had a bunch of interviews that I did, like a bunch of interviews that I did. And so I have all of those interviews for you. I have the cast of Strange World. I have from Disney. I have that includes Jake Gyllenhaal, Gabrielle Union, and Dennis Quaid. I have the cast of Fantasy Football, which includes Amari Hardwick, producer, actress extraordinaire Marseille Martin. I also have Soledad O'Brien, who is the producer of the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards nominated documentary, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks. I also have Frank Grillo from Lamborghini, of the Lamborghini movie. I have two of the people that were interviewed and participated in a documentary, Mickey, the Story of a Mouse. Who else do I have in here? I have so many people. I have the director of the Critics' Choice winner in numerous categories, 5 to be exact, Mr. Ryan White, the director of Night Oppy. I have Bonnie Hunt from Zootopia Plus, which is on Disney Plus. And I have the cast of Devotion, which includes Jonathan Majors and Glenn Powell. I know, child, that is a lot of people. So I'm gonna get into it. Some of these interviews, I did a compilation because I didn't want y'all to sit through 5-minute interviews of me asking the same question over and over again. But that was that. Let me get into what's saying here. I got to check in with Brandon. I always check in with my boy Brandon. He says he's in he's in animation school. He was telling Kenneth that he's in animation school. And again, hello, Kenneth Williams. Thank you, thank you. And what are you saying to me, Kenneth? You're saying, great, can't wait to see your project someday. Oh, I love how people are supporting each other on my platform. Yay, I love that. Okay, so let me go back to the interviews and let's tell you about the first one that I have up. All right, so the first one is this film called Devotion. It debuted in theaters last week. It centers around a man named Jesse Brown, who was a fighter pilot. He was one of the first Black fighter pilots, and he was killed in battle. So this is telling his story. I'd never heard of him before. The film was great. Jonathan Majors crushed it as usual. Christina Jackson crushing it as usual. Glenn Powell crushing it as usual. But I'm gonna let them tell you more about it. So first up, we have the director JD and Christina Jackson from Devotion.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Let me first say, Christina, girl. You
Thank
know,
you.
you already know. You already know. You just
Thank
already
you.
know. Christina, taking on this role of Daisy with the fortitude that you did and the family values that she inhabited, I want to know from both of you actually, after inhabiting this world of Jesse and Tom, what does the word devotion look like for you on the other side of this journey?
Jonathan used this term when we were in New York. He said human expense. And when you think about devotion, when you think about love, sacrifice, commitment, all of it is so much more heightened after doing this, specifically because of Daisy continuing on. For me, devotion, it has a depth now that is, it's deeper than deep. To steal your thing from the last question, it's deeper than deep, and I've sat and now begin to question what are the things that I'm now devoted to, with a new lens, a new light, a new love.
This film has changed the way like I want to make movies, you know, because that thing that she's speaking about was also on set. You know, it was between each of us, it was between our crew, it was between the movie and the families, you know, who we're telling the story about. And the sort of, you know, the sort of like devotion to what our primary goal was here, which is sharing this story with more people, introducing people to the Brown family, to the Hudner family, to what Jesse did when he did it. You know, there's, yes, a lot of responsibility, but there's also such an overwhelming amount of pride to get to do that. And that trickles down. I mean, you'd feel it at Crafty, and, you know, our friends in Crafty were like, I just finished the book. And you're like, this is like everyone on the movie had bought in. And you don't always get that. But I think it was sort of led by, or was sort of powered by, you know, who we were telling the story about, that really made the whole experience just feel different.
I'm glad you brought up the book. How did Adam's book come into your peripheral?
Well, the funny thing about devotion, you know, Glenn found the book 6-7 years ago, and in reading it was like, obviously this needs to be shared with more people. He took it to Black Label, who were our sort of producer financiers, and they worked with Glenn and some writers for a number of years to get a script. You know, sort of off in a different timeline, I'd sort of put out into the world that like I was looking for a story about aviation because my dad, 30 years behind Jesse, was also a naval aviator. So I'd wanted to like just somehow honor that part of my experience, my family's experience. So when I got sent the script, you know, a script based on the book, based on the true story of these men, I mean, I cried my way through reading the script, because not only was, and I'd heard Jesse's name, but obviously not to this intimate level. But then I also was like, geez, there's so many moments here that directly overlap with experiences my dad has had, and he's told me this growing up. So then it was like, well, okay, now I feel called to tell this story, not just to, you know, honor Jesse and Tom, but then also in this way get to tell my dad's story, which, you know, I never expected to be able to do. So, you know, yeah, it's very different when you're called to a movie than just, you know, wanting to shoot it. So there was definitely a weight to this process that I'd never felt before.
Well, I'm glad you were called to make devotion, and I'm glad that you got Christina and Glenn and Jesse and Joe and everybody else that's in the cast, because it was very well done, and I enjoyed it. And I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed having this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right, see you soon.
I'm glad you brought up the book. How did Adam's book come into your peripheral?
Well, the funny thing about devotion, you know, Glenn found the book 6-7 years ago, and in reading it was like, obviously this needs to be shared with more people. He took it to Black Label, who were our sort of producer financiers, and they worked with Glenn and some writers for a number of years to get a script. sort of off in a different timeline, I'd sort of put out into the world that like I was looking for a story about aviation because my dad, 30 years behind Jesse, was also a naval aviator. So I'd wanted to like just somehow honor that part of my experience, my family's experience. So when I got sent the script, a script based on the book, based on the true story of these men, I mean, I cried my way through reading the script because not only and I'd heard Jesse's name, but obviously not to this intimate level. But then I also was like, geez, there's so many moments here that directly overlap with experiences my dad has had. And he's told me this growing up. So then it was like, well, okay, now I feel called to tell this story, not just to, honor Jesse and Tom, but then also in this way get to tell my dad's story, which, I never expected to be able to do. So, it's very different when you're called to a movie than just, wanting to shoot it. So there was definitely a weight to this process that I'd never felt before.
Well, I'm glad you were called.
I don't know what happened with that interview, you guys. I might have to re-edit that and show it again. But I believe I have a version of it up on YouTube. So you got the gist of the interview with JD and Christina. I'm going to fix that though and rebroadcast it on my YouTube channel. I won't take up time with it here. All right. So next up is Jonathan Majors and Glenn Powell. And I kind of teased Glenn about, so if Glenn Powell looks familiar to you, he's the same dude that was in Top Gun. And I'm like, this dude just can't stay out of a cockpit. Every movie that he's done this year is dealing with him being in a plane. And he was also in Hidden Figures, but he, very graciously took my little jab. And, but yeah, I'll let them tell you more about it. So this is Jonathan Majors and Glenn Powell, who play Tom and Jesse in Devotion.
Hi.
Caller Renata.
Yeah. What's up, Jonathan?
What's up?
What's up? You guys, this struck me in a very visceral way because my dad was a jet mechanic in the Marine Corps and he fought in World War II. So this hit me, and I used to perform for the troops via the USO. So this really struck me in a very visceral way. But having said that, Jonathan, I saw you popping off that French.
Yes, ma'am.
I saw you popping off that French. And Glenn, you just can't stay out of a cockpit, can you?
No, ma'am.
All right. So this is what I want to ask you guys. After inhabiting these worlds of Jesse and Tom, these two men realized that they were coming up against odds. Tom coming right out of the academy and Jesse struggling with a man of color who was being expected to fail even by himself. So what does the word devotion mean to both of you now, being on the other side of this journey?
We were talking about the concept of who do you call? Do you remember this conversation?
Yeah.
Where it's this idea that when life may be at its end, when things are going poorly, when you have good news, bad news, or absolutely tragic news, who is the person that calls your soul to reach out, to carry on a certain legacy? And there's something about this movie that has really unlocked that in my life about who those relationships are that don't just propel your life forward for a moment or a chapter, but propel your life forward possibly through generations that can continue on. And I feel like Jonathan Majors is one of those souls, one of those people that is, again, as soon as we met, it felt like we'd been friends for years, but not just in a chummy, like, oh, I love hanging with this guy. It's like truly like, soul to soul, brother to brother. Like, I just like love this guy and how he sees the world and just how committed he is to the people around him. So if you can leave a experience with a friend for life, a friend that you get to navigate those chapters of life with, I think that's a huge victory.
To me, after the film, the word itself to me feels synonymous with the Greek word agape, right? Which means unconditional. And so I've been wrestling with what devotion has, how it has settled in my soul and how I would speak about it. And it seems to me that devotion is a unconditional love that continues to act irregardless of the obstacles, irregardless of the consequences, and performs beyond the call of duty, and has a resonance in the person and in the people that person comes in contact with long after the physical manifestation of that devotion has passed.
Y'all are some deep brothers.
Oh, you know, yeah.
Y'all are deep. Oh my goodness. I could talk to you for a whole.
When she said devotion, she was talking about tattoos. We got those matching tattoos.
Oh yeah, because right.
So that's
look.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, you guys, that is my time. Your performances in this film was absolutely spectacular. I enjoyed you both so very much, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Please spread the word. Talk
Bye.
soon.
Oh, I will.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.
Can we just talk about the fact that they kept going, yes, ma'am? Both of them were raised right, but I'm like, yes, ma'am made me feel like I was their grandmama. I'm just saying. I probably could be, but anyway, that's a whole nother subject. Oh boy, I am a hot mess today. Anyway, last but not least, Joe Jonas is in the film. And I talked to him and one of the other castmates about the same thing. I asked everybody, what devotion means to them on the other side of this journey. And Joe actually has some really interesting things to say. So take a look and a listen to this interview with Joe Jonas.
What's up?
I was so cold busted.
It's okay.
There's so many worse things you could have been busted doing.
Yeah. I love your room. It's so fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. So I want to know, well, first, let me just say that I'm Carla Renata, the Curvy Film Critic, so they don't know who I am because there's so many people. But let me just ask you this. How many pilot films or aviation films did you guys watch to prepare for this?
Yep.
A lot of stuff. I mean, personally, a lot of podcasts, speaking to pilots, speaking to naval officers and different service people that are sacrificing their time and just getting a little tiny antidote of what it would be like and trying to even understand from a bird's eye view. So lots of stuff.
I just watched Top Gun a lot, a lot.
Strictly, oddly, that one scene where they're playing that volleyball.
The volleyball. I felt like that was going to teach me the most, was just watching them play volleyball. Boiled up.
That is hilarious. Did y'all give Glenn a hard time? I'm like, he just can't stay out of a cockpit. He did Top Gun Maverick. He's doing this.
We did, but I think at the time, it's just stories that he's, I did this movie, I did the new Top Gun, and then you cut to biggest movie of the year, and you're like, that's a little different.
It was. I mean,
now there's more things involved.
He's so humble about it. He's such a humble, gracious, sweet guy that he would just sort of offhandedly mention oh, when I was doing this, or when I, in this moment we were blah blah blah, and we'd all just sort of listen to it. And now it's the biggest movie, and so we hit him harder now than we ever did on set.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we actually don't even need to. Most interviews start with Glenn, so you're now this is strictly your category, huh?
Yeah. Most of the press takes care of that for us. Yeah.
That is pure comedy. I just want to share this with you leading into this next question. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and I performed for the USO on aircraft carriers in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Wow.
So this film hit very different for me than it will for most people. But having said that, having been on that journey, what has this journey been for you guys inhabiting these men, and what does the word devotion mean for you now on the other side of this journey? Because I'm sure it was very different coming into it than it was coming out of it.
Wow. Well, first off, thank you to your father for sacrificing time, and also you lending him to the world, to the U.S. What I will say is, my cousin, he's a naval officer, and he's pretty highly ranked. And I spoke to him, I think a week before I flew out to Savannah. We had a long conversation, and the biggest thing, the takeaway was just the time and the sacrifice and the willingness to just put any personal life aside. This is it. This is everything, and it's just mind-boggling and honoring. And so I think devotion, that is the highest level, to just devote everything you are to something else. And so I think being on set, meeting the families, talking to different people, that just getting kind of an understanding. I think we all have a really special place in our heart for this film and this project, and I'm really glad that you shared that. This is amazing. I'm like blown away. It's cool.
It's humbling. You get asked to inhabit these characters who were real men, who really sacrificed, really lived and died for this thing that they believed in to the absolute core of their being. And it's a humbling and intimidating thing to be asked to do. When Adam Makos, who wrote the book, saw a screening of it, he contacted me because I hadn't seen the movie yet. He reached out to me and he was like, I'm stepping into the screening. Do you want me to tell you what I think? And I was like, listen, I don't care. The only thing I care about, and I just need you to answer me this question. Do you think the Savoli family will be proud of the work that I did? That's all I care about. Like, that's because I got to know them. I got to speak to them a bit. And as much as it helped in the preparation for the character, it added so much importance to wanting to achieve the best that I could achieve with this film. And, coming out the other side of being part of telling this story, I agree completely with what Joe said, that watching, even from a great, great distance of time, the sacrifice of not only everything they are, but everything they will be, could be, the willingness to sacrifice your whole life for your brothers and your sisters in combat is, you stand in awe of that kind of dedication and that kind of love. And then this story by itself, I think, is just the absolute pinnacle of that. It's an honor to be a part of it.
Well, I stand in awe of your performances. Thank you so much for sharing them. And thank you for giving me your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
Bye.
Bye now.
So just to reiterate, you guys, Devotion is produced by Sony Pictures. It is directed by J.D. Dillard. It stars Jonathan Majors, Christina Jackson, Glenn Powell, Joe Jonas, and Thomas Sadowski. I couldn't remember his name before, but that was Thomas Sadowski in that interview with Joe Jonas. It drops on November 23rd. And again, the film is an inspirational true story of Jesse Brown, the first Black aviator in U.S. naval history, and his enduring friendship with his fellow fighter pilot, Tom Hudner. Helping to turn the tide in the most brutal battle in the Korean War, their heroic sacrifices ultimately make them the Navy's most celebrated wingmen. It's a true story. And like I said, it did hit me differently because I do come from a military family, but you will enjoy it and you will enjoy learning about Jesse Brown. And again, I get so tired of hearing about Black history in film, but I'm glad that I know Jesse Brown now, because had it not been for the film, I probably still wouldn't know who he was. All right, so the next film I saw was a film called Lamborghini, The Man Behind the Legend. Frank Grillo plays him, and Frank Grillo is a former soap opera star, and he plays the title role of Lamborghini. This is a Lionsgate joint. It is directed and written by Bobby Moresco, and it also stars Mira Sorvino. It dropped in theaters on November 17th. Now, it deals with the life story of Ferruccio Lamborghini, and it deals with him in this rival that he has with Enzo Ferrari, and how Lamborghini tries to get his untested car prepped for a victory at the upcoming Geneva Grand Prix. So I talked to Frank Grillo, who plays Lamborghini, about being Italian and having to play this legend, bringing the Italian legacy to life in this way. And this is what he had to say. Had you ever driven a Lamborghini prior to starting this film?
I have. I've driven. I have a couple of friends who have them, and I've driven a couple of them, and I'm not a big sports guy, sports car guy. So I've never really wanted to have one of them.
How did you feel getting behind the wheel of one though? Did you feel any sense of power?
You know, I just I have a new sense of appreciation for it now, understanding how and why it was built.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned about the man and his journey while prepping for this role?
The most surprising thing to me, and I've said it before, was that how wealthy he was prior to starting the car company. And he had started at a very young age. He had started a tractor company. He built these amazing tractors and had become so successful that he owned like 7 or 8. He had a Lamborghini for each day of the week. That's what he used to say. And he had a very successful heating and air conditioning company. So he was quite a famous industrialist in Italy before he had the idea to start a car company.
That was surprising to me as well. I never would have associated tractors with Lamborghini. You know what I mean? Never in a million years would that had ever crossed my mind. So that's a good point. So as an Italian American, how important was it for you to represent his legacy with your performance?
Yeah, I mean, it was everything. You know, I feel like I've come full circle. I come from immigrant people. They come from Italy, and you know, they're dirt poor and they were uneducated, and they came to America to find a better life. And then I'm back in Italy making a movie about an amazing Italian icon in one generation. And so it was a real existential experience for me. And I kind of wish my parents were alive to see it, because I think they would not so much that they would need to be proud of me, but proud of being Italian.
It's important to keep that type of thing alive and to keep representing your people. You know what I mean?
I you know, and they are my people. And when I went home, I got a real, it struck me in a way I wasn't expecting. And I really fell in love with my culture and who I am. And, you know, sometimes when you come here, when your parents and grandparents come here as immigrants, you try to shy away from where you came because you want to be American, you know, and my family was no different. And it was really beautiful to kind of go back and love being Italian, you know, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it does. It makes a lot of sense. And I totally understand it. I do. Real quick, before we get up out of here, which did you enjoy more, being part of the MCU or portraying Lamborghini?
I love being part of the Marvel world, but Lamborghini, this for me has, it's made my career an entirely different thing for me. So I loved doing this, and hopefully there will be other people out there that will hire me to do things like this more.
Oh, Frank, I don't think you're going to have any problem getting hired to do anything else.
Thank you.
But that is my time. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
What I will say about this film is that it was very interesting to learn the history behind Lamborghini. Like, I did not know that he was he built tractors. He started out building tractors, not luxury sports cars. And he was, you know, a laborer in a very different way. It was interesting to learn his lineage. As far as the film is concerned, it's a little bit of a slow burn. Frank does a really good job playing Lamborghini, and Mira Sorvino does a great job in her role as well. But this film is a real slow burn. But, you know, it's the holiday week. I'm doing films that you may want to watch and check out during the Thanksgiving holiday weekend and week. And so, you know, check it out. You might learn a thing or two. It is, again, called Lamborghini, The Man Behind the Legend. It is a Lionsgate joint, and it dropped in theaters on November 17th. Good Night Oppy won 5 Critics' Choice Documentary Awards a couple of weeks ago. Well, not a couple of weeks ago, a week ago from today. A week ago, just a week ago. It won 5 Critics' Choice Awards. And the director and writer of that film is Ryan White. And I had an opportunity to talk to him before then, but let me tell you what this is about. And I think I've spoken about it before because I've seen it at a couple of festivals. And every time I see it at a festival, I talk about it. But it was was released in theaters on November 4th, and it's going to be on Prime Video on November 23rd, which is why I'm telling you about it again here. It charts the remarkable true story of Opportunity, a NASA exploration rover that was sent to Mars for a 90-day mission and ended up surviving for 15 years. The thing about this film that is so wonderful is that it will tug at your heartstrings in a way that you don't expect. And I tell Ryan this in the interview, which you'll see in just a minute. But this is a really good documentary. I have a feeling it's probably going to go the distance. We'll be hearing a lot about it between now and the end of the Oscar season. But it's a great, great, great movie. Y'all know that documentaries are like my kryptonite, and that I talk about them all the time. But I immensely enjoyed this one. So take a look and listen to this interview with the director and writer of Good Night Oppy, Mr. Ryan White.
Nice to meet you, Carla. How are you?
Listen, I'm better now that I'm talking to you, because this is a film that I never in a million years thought I would have been emotional about, because I'm a nerd, but I'm not a science nerd. So I was kind of like, okay, let me see and honey, by the end of it, I was in the ugly cry, as Oprah would say.
Well,
when y'all got to I'll Be Seeing You, I was spent.
And Billie Holiday tugging at your heartstrings. I actually always find this the biggest compliment when someone says some version of like, I would have never chosen to see this film for whatever reason. I'm not into space. It's outside of my interest. And it sucked me in some way. I love hearing that, because we did try to make this film. It's a human interest story, right? And it's very difficult, because it's always gonna be relegated to looking like a science documentary or a space documentary, and it is. But I hope it's also a much more than that. And so I'm very happy to hear you responded to it. I'm sorry that you ugly cried, though.
Listen, at least I was in the comfort of my own home. Had I been out in a theater somewhere, it would not have been a lovely thing to witness. Trust me when I tell you, it was not cute. It really wasn't. It was kind of like watching E.T. come to life is what it was. But what I want to know from you, Ryan, is what was the choice to embark upon this world? Because this is a NASA project that we hear about in the news in a blurb, but we don't see it to this extent, never in any kind of film that I can remember. So what made you want to tackle this and present it in this way? Because it was really beautiful.
Thank you so much. I love journey stories, and I think that is the through line between all of my films. I feel very privileged to be a documentary filmmaker who's been allowed to go on some crazy journeys with people going through some crazy things, and to get to be on the sidelines for that and win people's trust over. I really enjoy that type of story, and that's especially at this point in my career, those are the types of stories that I seek out. And this felt like one that was totally different than most of the stuff that I get pitched. And I felt like if we can make a character-based film about these two robots on this insane journey and take the audience to Mars in a way that's never been done, what a unique opportunity as a documentary filmmaker. Like, I didn't make this story up. A screenwriter didn't write it. It's a true story, and it is a documentary, but it is a fantastic adventure. And so I was drawn to it, and I wanted to be a part of it.
I want to talk to you about the music aspect of it, because the music was very intentional, and most of it was done by the scientists themselves when they would pick the song of the day. But then you had to collaborate with your composer, Blake Neely, on some other music. And I just wanted to know what that conversation looked and sounded like to fill in the gaps.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with Blake Neely on many of my documentaries, almost all of them. And we always begin the process very early. He starts writing music much earlier than I think most composers do, because I like to start listening to music, even if it doesn't end up in our final film or it's some very far off iteration of that. I like to listen while I'm traveling to my shoots, just to start putting me, it's like like a fighter getting in the zone, I think, before I shoot. And so Blake starts writing that music for me. And this music evolved a lot while we were making it. And that was namely because we hired Mark Mangini as our sound designer, and he did Dune and Mad Max Fury Road. And while we were working with him, we realized he was capable of doing so much of the heavy lifting of bringing an authentic Mars to life. And it gave Blake and I a lot of freedom to not have to do that in the score itself. And it allowed us just to become, I think, a lot more cinematic in how we scored it. And it's the biggest orchestra we've ever had. I think it was 60 something musicians that played in this orchestra. And it's a big, epic, beautiful story. And we wanted the score to do that justice as well.
Thank you so much for giving me your time today, Ryan. And I just want to give you props with, all of your work. You always find the humanistic side of it with Dr. Ruth, with Serena, and with Night Oppy. You've done it again. Congratulations. And I'm waiting for y'all to pick up that Oscar, baby.
Oh, we'll see. But thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. Take care.
Take care, Carla. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm telling you, Ryan, that listen. It might even be a tie for an Oscar. Let me see what's happening. Kenneth said, you looking forward to going back to Sunday? I'm looking forward to going back to Sundays in the new year too, because Mondays is proving to be very problematic for me, just because of my life becoming a little more busier, which is a great thing, and not being able to navigate it with my 5,000 other jobs. So there's that. But let's move on with the show. So again, you guys, Night Oppy. It's in theaters right now. It comes to Amazon Prime Video on November 23rd. Please check it out. It's a great thing to watch with your family. It's very educational, very inspirational, and extremely emotional, as you could tell from the way I communicated to Ryan about how I was dealing with it when I watched it. I mean, I was heaving and in the ugly cry, like I do not exaggerate. All right, another documentary that is near and dear to my heart. So last week, Minnie celebrated her 50th birthday. The year before, or a couple of years back, Mickey celebrated his 100th birthday. And so in honor of all of that, Disney Plus released a documentary called Mickey, the Story of a Mouse. It tells the story of the cultural significance of this 100-year-old cartoon mouse. We all love Mickey. He's very beloved. He's recognized as a symbol of joy and childhood innocence around the globe. And there's an exclusive animated short film that goes along with this called Mickey in a Minute. I had an opportunity to speak with Carmenita Higginbotham. That's a lot to say in the mouth. I'm just saying, Carmenita Higginbotham. Got it. And Megan Walsh, who incidentally is the daughter of John Walsh, the man who used to do America's Most Wanted. So she's one of the people two of these ladies are featured in the film. And I spoke to them about a lot of things dealing with Mickey Mouse. And I put their interviews together for the sake of time so that you guys aren't watching me ask the same thing over and over and over again. But here is that interview with Carmen and Megan talking about our favorite mouse, Mickey.
I'm from Missouri. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. So I have a special affection and pride for Walt Disney and the mouse. So I was very excited about that. But I'm just curious to know, is there someone from your home state that you feel that way about?
Oh my gosh. Well, I grew up in Minnesota. So I would say that someone I feel that way about it would be, of course, Prince. It would be the figure that I identify most with, and that sort of revered sort of status that had changed culture.
I love that you said Prince. When you said Minnesota, I'm like, ooh, who is she going to say? I was not expecting Prince. Yes, Carmenita, get
Always it. Prince. Come on.
Yes. What? Purple Rain? What? Okay.
What?
So in the process of participating in this film, what was the most surprising thing you learned about Mickey Mouse?
As someone who is a scholar, someone who studies popular culture, I guess I'm so surprised by, and this is a broad answer, the enduring presence Mickey Mouse has. I know that is the fact. I talked to individuals about that fact, but in seeing the film and really watching and understanding the progression of this character and really condensed in, an extensive history in under 2 hours, one really feels like sort of the prominence and weight of that character. And so I'm just so surprised and thrilled that time and attention was spent on him, and that people are excited to see a film about Mickey, particularly as it is a character who has moved into sort of an icon status, right? We don't see Mickey in feature-length films anymore. And so to know that he still resonates in a variety of ways, in the ways in which he's shifted over time, that is just almost stunning to me.
How Lillian saw Walt in Mickey and she couldn't see Mickey, without seeing Walt after he died. That's so sort of touching and strange that even the person closest to him associated Walt with this character. And really the most thrilling for me was just watching the hand-drawn action of making Mickey Mouse, watching our animators work in 2D, watching the ink and paint team do the inking and painting on old animation cells. It's not really done that often anymore. So just getting to be a witness to that was exciting for us.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be. I remember I attended the 100th anniversary of his birthday, right, with my mom. And I was like, my mom has a different affection and memory for Mickey Mouse than I do. And you know what I mean? Like, she was telling me the first time she saw Mickey Mouse and how it made her feel. And I remember the first time I saw the mouse and how it made me feel. I'm just wondering, when was the first time you saw Mickey? And how did that make you feel? And how has it had a lasting impression on your life as an adult? Because it's one thing for him to have an effect on your life as a child, but it's a very different thing as an adult.
I would completely agree with that statement. I remember seeing Disney shorts and Disney cartoons on television on Sundays in the Wonderful World of Disney. It was, do you remember this TV show? And
The Wonderful World of Disney every Sunday night. I do.
And that is exactly how I was really exposed, because I had gone to Disney films as a child, saw The Love Bug in the theater, saw some of these other films, but never had the chance to really think about Mickey alone as a character. So I would say that's the first time. And he always seemed to be at the right hand of Walt. Sort of the spokesperson of Walt Disney. And he seemed to be, this really cool critical vehicle through which Walt sort of engaged with everyone. He was wondrous in as much as he was almost more of a symbol than a character. He was in cartoons with Goofy and other folks, but at that point, his personality had really, I would say, stabilized as a character, and he took on an iconic status. By the time you're an adult, you start asking yourself questions. Why this mouse? Why this character? Why has it stayed with me through my whole childhood and into my adulthood? I think that's a question that at least I believe the documentary, starts to take on as viewers start to reflect about what this mouse means to them.
I can't actually remember the first time. I feel like his image has always been imprinted on our brains, but I remember the first time I met Mickey at Disney World when I was 7, and I felt everything, children still feel: joy, happiness, sheer enthusiasm for this mouse human. Not quite sure I even could process what he was at that point.
Right? I don't think any of us can when we're kids. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
What's going to be his legacy moving into the next 100 years?
That's a really great question. And I couldn't say with certainty because so much has happened in the last 100 years. I imagine, artists will continue to work with Mickey in all the various ways that they've used his imagery for their purposes. I'm sure Disney will continue to rely on Mickey as the emblem for their continuing brand. And I hope that he just continues to resonate with children and stay sort of this symbol of joy for people as they move forward into adulthood and beyond. Just having that sense of childhood is really important to retain. That's a really great question. And I couldn't say with certainty because so much has happened in the last 100 years. I imagine, artists will continue to work with Mickey in all the various ways that they've used his imagery for their purposes. I'm sure Disney will continue to rely on Mickey as the emblem for their continuing brand. And I hope that he just continues to resonate with children and stay sort of this symbol of joy for people as they move forward into adulthood and beyond. Just having that sense of childhood is really important to retain.
I think it's trickier now to have him expand out, because then it becomes, who does Mickey represent? And in the 50s and 60s, it was middle-brow, middle-class America. But that category, that cultural category, socioeconomic category, that's changed. That's been rendered considerably more complex with different identities that have pushed into middle class and are having an impact on culture formation.
Absolutely. And one last question. I know that you've done Who Do You Think They Are, right? Is there going to be a Who Do You Think You Are Mickey Mouse coming up next?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we sort of did the Rashomon version of how Mickey came to be, and that's probably as good as you're going to get.
It was wonderful to meet you. Thank you for chatting with me today.
You're very welcome. Bye now.
Okay, so next up is a journalist who I adore, I respect, and I revere. Her name is Soledad O'Brien. Her documentary, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, was also Critics' Choice nominated at the Doc Awards a week ago. And the thing about this particular documentary is that everybody thinks that Rosa Parks' story starts and stops with her sitting on that bus, and is so much more than that. It is a riveting film. It is a very eye-opening film, especially from the vantage point of how men during that era took all the credit and kind of had women standing on the sidelines, regardless of what their role may have been in the movement. So it's important to note that. But Soledad and I really get into it, and I really would like for you guys to take a little time and check this one out, because it's a doozy.
When Black women go missing, it's ignored. When Rosa Parks did what she did with this movement, it was kind of ignored. And it's kind of what I really loved about The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks is the fact that who knew that she was broke? Because from our perspective, it looked like she was banking dollars all the way through her whole entire life. Who knew she was broke? Who, you know what I mean? Who knew that she grew up with this intense fire in her belly when it came to racism? Who knew that she lost her job? Who knew that she had a husband that was affiliated with the Scottsboro? Girl, the things that you brought up in this documentary that nobody knows, which brings me to this. Why do you think that those are some of the reasons why there hasn't been a documentary about Rosa Parks? Do you think that it's been safer for people to just lean into that narrative about this little small, diminutive woman who sat on the bus because her feet were tired? And it wasn't so much about her feet being tired as it was her being tired of being Black and being mistreated.
Well, which she would say all the time. I keep telling people, when I said I was tired, I wasn't any more tired than after any workday, right? Like, you guys are misconstruing the word tired. I am tired of Black people being treated this way. And I have been since I was 8 years old, seeing my grandfather protect our house from the KKK. Like, I am tired, not, ooh, long day at work. Yeah. So I don't know, honestly, because I just find it so interesting. And maybe that was the thing. Maybe people wanted to do the comforting story. And maybe they felt because the story is so comfortable, it went from A to B, right? Like, Rosa Parks sat on a bus and then got a statue. What else is there to tell? That's not a doc. That's not even a short. That's a 4-minute piece. I don't know if that would be the reason why, but when Yoruba and Johanna had said that, there's never been a doc on Rosa Parks, like a full-length doc, that was kind of my reaction. Like, I'm sure I believe you, but let me just Google this to make sure, because I couldn't believe it seems so insane. But again, I think you're right. If you believe that her story runs the gamut from A to B, and not the gamut from A to Z, then you think, what's there to tell a doc about? We know exactly what she did. Every seventh grader knows Rosa Parks and what she did. Sat on the bus. That's it. And I think the details of her life that were so interesting to me, not just being broke, but the number of times, again, she would chide reporters in the nicest of ways who would talk about, aren't you glad you left the South? Because here in Detroit, and she's like, there's racism here, right? She would like literally tell people what they sometimes did not want to hear. Fascinating. So we knew immediately it would be an incredible doc because it was the twist on the story you think you know. And almost everything you think you know is wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, I contacted you immediately after I saw it because I was just so full and so fired up by what I had witnessed. I didn't know that she, as much as she was associated with Dr. Martin Luther King, she was a fan of the Black Panthers and Malcolm X, which is the complete antithesis of what everybody thinks that she was standing for. You know what I mean? She seemed to be a woman who was a fan of anybody that wanted to right or wrong, regardless of what side of that they were on.
Anybody going this direction in progress for Black people, that's the bus she was on, right?
Exactly.
And I think that probably also plays a role in the lack of understanding her, right? Well, that seems contradictory. Dr. King makes sense. Malcolm X, I don't know. The Black Panthers, So I think it makes other people comfortable. I think for Black people, we're used to that, right? We're used to being in spaces where it's like part of your job is to make other people comfortable. And I think we all get to the age, usually for me, it was like around 30, and maybe for other people, it's younger or older, where you stop trying to make other people comfortable. Like if they're having an issue with your hair or the color of your skin or how you speak, like you just are like, this is clearly a you problem and not a me problem. And I do think a lot of what happened in the understanding of Rosa Parks was like people wanted the simple narrative. Don't give me complication. I want the arc to go from here to there. Boom. And then at the end, she gets to lie in state, and then she gets a statue. How hard can that be? Versus, this is complicated. I always like the messy and complicated, and I think it always makes for a better documentary.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, you are like an OG in the news arena. Girl, you are, especially when it comes to
old.
No, not old, but seasoned, well-seasoned. You're a well-seasoned woman in the news arena. That's a Black woman, and that's important because there aren't that many of us in that space. So I just want to acknowledge you for that and say that. But I hear
feeling like I have to say stuff when I have the opportunity to call out things that I think are bullshit or wrong or badly done or badly centered or badly framed. Like I have a lot of credibility. I've done this for a long time. I've done a really long time. And I'm self-employed, right? I absolutely, like, if it's not me, then who's going to do it? Who's going to be the person that I've sat in on a zillion TV network meetings. I know exactly how it goes. A lot, so I do think for me, it always feels like, well, then I think you have a responsibility to say this framing is wrong. It doesn't have to be this way. Why are we framing this story versus that story? Look who we're centering. Look who we're making the hero. Look at why are we doing this? I think that's important.
Yeah. But I know that you've also, you're working on, if you haven't done it already, established a curriculum based on story for schools. Can you tell me a little bit about that before we pop out?
We partnered with the Ford Foundation, who've been really amazing to, again, where students learn about Rosa Parks is kind of, at least I did, in about 7th or 8th grade. And so we knew we wanted to get to middle schoolers who are going to read about Rosa Parks and make sure that they had, the actual narrative, the factual narrative in their hands. And the funny thing about middle schoolers is that, well, anybody who's ever had a middle schooler in their life knows, like, those are truth tellers. You want a truth teller?
Oh, honey, yes, they'll let you know, quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Be prepared. Like they are, and so it's been so interesting to see that how much they aren't struggling with Malcolm X, Dr. King, right? They're like, yep, makes perfect sense. She was going to use by any means necessary to get the things that she wanted. And it made a lot of sense for her to have multiple paths and people who she respected and thought were smart and really down for the cause. So I think in some ways they're much more comfortable with the things that older people are uncomfortable with. They totally grasp a contradictory narrative, right? They're like, yep, makes perfect sense that that's how someone would behave, and they're fine with things that don't make sense or things that seem messy and complex. And I've really loved that about middle schoolers, although yes, they are the harshest. I know you're the curvy critic, but boy, they are like the meanest critics in the world, but they are hardcore about it. And I think this curriculum was going to be really helpful for those students who really actually want to understand in more depth the accurate story of Rosa Parks.
Absolutely. It's streaming right now on Peacock. Soledad O'Brien, you are my girl. I love you so much. I love what you're doing with your new production company. I love these films that you're doing. I love that you navigate in the doc space because I too love documentaries, as you know. And I really want to just take the time to thank you and let you know how much I appreciate you in the space, how much I appreciate what you're doing, and how much I immensely appreciate you carving out some time for me after you sent your kid off.
Oh my God, it was my pleasure. And that event was so nice. I mean, kudos to you. You did it was a beautiful night and some really fantastic docs. I mean, there's so many that I was like, oh, I need to see that. Oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, I need to see that. So really wonderful. It was fun. It was really fun to see people getting up and talking about their process and thanking people and how they got to. And really, I think all the awardees, spoke about centering the people whose stories they were telling, right? Like it's nothing without the people who've agreed to be in the story. And so it was a wonderful night at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards. So thank you for including me in that too.
Oh, I'm so glad you were able to attend, and congratulations on your nomination for that too. It was great. Yay!
Thank you. And thanks for having me on the podcast too.
Oh, yes, girl. Thank you for coming. I cannot even tell you, this made my day, my week, my month, my year. I'm telling you, I'm so excited. I can't even stand myself right now.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Soledad, thank you so much.
You bet.
Bye.
So long. Thanks for having me. Take care.
You too. Listen, if you don't know who Soledad O'Brien is, you better get on the Soledad O'Brien train because she is the bomb.com. Again, her documentary is The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks. It is streaming on Peacock right now. It is Critics' Choice Association nominated. And funny story, so at the award ceremony, Christopher Campbell, the other co-president, and myself had given the intro to the ceremony that evening. And I'm scooching past the tables, trying to get to my seat, and went right past Soledad and went past her and was like, was that Soledad O'Brien? I think that was Soledad O'Brien, but it was. And so when we started the interview, we had a little conversation about that, which y'all didn't need to be privy to, but I just wanted to give a little side note about that. All right. So just to lighten it up, since we talked about Rosa Parks and the civil rights movement, let's lighten it up and go to another fun Disney Plus joint. The film Zootopia, which was really great a few years back. Disney has now taken Zootopia and called it Zootopia Plus and put it into like 6 little mini 8-minute episodes that are freaking hilarious. It is directed, most of the episodes are directed by Trent Corey and Josie Trinidad. And it deals with everybody's return to Metropolis to discover some intriguing characters, including Frou Frou. Baby, they do a take on what is it called? The Real House, and Josie directed this episode. I think it was called The Real Housewives. Oh gosh, I wrote it down because it made me laugh. It's a Real Housewives franchise, but in animated form. Honey, if you have not seen it, you need to hop on over to Disney Plus and see that. That made me holler out loud. The art, Officer Clawhauser, they show him. They do a whole spin. All of the things that were really funny in the Zootopia film, they've now spun them off and made them little 8-minute episodes. They had one that was called Dealing with Gazelle, who was like a Beyonce-ish kind of character. My favorite one, though, aside from the Real Housewives one, was one about the sloths. Baby, it was hysterical. I'm going to put up the interview with the directors next week because I didn't have enough time this week, but where they can tell you more about the sloths. But this is Don Page and Bonnie Hunt who play the Hops, and they talk about working together at Second City and bringing Zootopia from the big screen to the small screen. So here's Bonnie Hunt and Don Page talking about Zootopia.
How does it feel to be able to take Zootopia from the film version, which is very limited in the story that it tells, to be able to expand Judy and Stu's story in this series? I'll start with Don first.
Well, it's so wonderful to see them in a light you never saw them in before. That's what I love about all these 6 episodes, is they take a moment and kind of expand, and you see where characters are coming or going from. But to see them in like an action film, and it's like, oh my gosh, and to think that this is all going on while the movie is kind of happening, right? Like a parallel universe, as they say. It's tremendous fun, and an action movie with the 2 of them. And Stu getting it wrong, Bonnie getting it right, listen to each other, work it out, and they survive. And that's all to save one of their how many kids do we have again, Bonnie?
275. Molly we're worried about here.
Yes.
275. That is hilarious. Y'all are funny.
There's no twins or triplets.
I love how you just say stuff with a straight face. Your comic timing is just unparalleled. Bar none. Oh, girl, please. I am a friend and a fan, straight up.
All right, Carla, but you know what? It takes one to know one. And it's like when somebody gets it, and it's the best thing in the world. So thank you. That means the world to me.
Oh, absolutely. And you guys are friends and writing partners. So how easy was it for you guys to kind of bounce off of each other? And you guys, didn't both of you work as study at Second City too?
That's where we met.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how easy is it for you guys to jump into this world, having that ease of working with each other in this way?
It's kind of easy, Carla. It's kind of easy. And that's a real, we're very lucky to be able to say that, but it is. We just jump in and we're just trying to make each other laugh. We're just having fun. So if somebody wants to draw it, if they want to record it, if they want to do whatever you want with it, but we're just entertaining each other right here and trying to make each other laugh. And then you get these beautiful characters that we get to do it in. And Trent and Josie are giving us the green light, the directors and the writers. So it's just a gift. We're very lucky.
No, I was just going to say, we met at Second City, and to be put on stage so shortly after we met with no script and suggestions from the audience, thinking on our feet and knowing instantly that we wanted to meet each other's expectations, I want to make Don laugh or make him think or make him react. Just the best.
If somebody were to give you a suggestion off the street for Judy and Stu, Bonnie, what would you want it to be?
For the parents, you mean?
Yeah.
I think
just like if you guys are at Second City.
Yeah. Well, a suggestion for something. I would like to see the 2 of them have to go back to college. They get to go. They have to go one semester, back to school, and because they're just so out of their element. Even with their stuff with FaceTime and Siri, and it was just so much fun to play that stuff. And I would love to see that. I'd take any suggestion for these 2 because it's so character.
Yeah, like I would like to see them, as parents with all these kids, they never get a break. I would like to see them win a vacation somewhere. And it just, it's close to a disaster. Every moment of it, it's close to a disaster.
Yeah, out of towners.
Yeah.
You guys make me laugh so hard, and you made me laugh when I watched the series. I laughed my booty off. But anyway, it's still here, but I still laughed it off. Anywho, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Y'all, I am a huge Bonnie Hunt fan. I mean, she's been in so many movies, and people don't know her name. They don't know who she is, that are of a younger generation. But let me tell you something, you're missing out if you're not on the Bonnie Hunt train. She's freaking hysterical and hilarious. So thank you for my compliment, and right back at you, Miss Bonnie Hunt. Zootopia Plus, y'all. It is going to be on the Disney Plus. It's streaming there right now, directed by Trent Corey and Josie Trinidad, who I'm going to bring to you. I'll show you on my social media and tell you all about them. Now I want to get into fantasy football. Fantasy football is directed by Anton Cropper. It's going to hit Paramount Plus. I think it's going to do it in tandem, theaters and Paramount Plus, on November 25th, just in time for the Thanksgiving holiday. It is produced and starring Blackish star Marseille Martin, Kelly Rowland, Omari Hardwick, and Rome Neal. And it deals with this little girl not little girl, but this teen girl who's played by Marseille Martin. She plays Omari Hardwick's daughter. And they move around. They've been moving around a lot for his football career, and just kind of adjusting to it the same way that I adjusted to my dad having to get stationed someplace when he was in the Marine Corps. But then she discovers that she can magically control the performance of her father when he's playing football through her gaming console, which is genius and hilarious. Loved it so very much. So what I did is I did a comp of the interviews. So this is an interview with the director. It's the interview with Marseille, Omari, Kelly, Rome. It's just everybody. And I'll talk a little bit more about it before we get into Strange World. I know this was a super long episode, y'all, but I wanted to give you something to keep you held over for the Thanksgiving holiday. All right, here we go. Fantasy football. Hi, you guys.
Hello, Carla.
What's happening?
What's happening?
I'm
See
good.
you Saint Lunatic. How you doing?
So I was extremely struck by this story because growing up, my dad was in the Marine Corps and we moved all the time. And so it was always, a struggle for me to fit in because I was kind of nerdy and geeky and I didn't fit in. Sometimes I didn't fit in with the nerds and sometimes I didn't fit in with the cool kids either. So I could totally relate to that part of the story. And I just wanted to share that. But I also was struck by the fact that with this game, they're able to control an aspect of their life, right? So if you were able to control any aspect of your life with a game console, what would it be and why would you do it?
I'm a big car person. So I automatically go to some sort of race car thing or some sort of off-road driving or something. Look, I'm a good driver, so at least I like to believe I am. And I probably drive faster than I should. But I don't know. I guess, for me, it would be something to do with cars and driving fast. And I guess that's not me control. I guess I already do that. I'm me controlling me already because I do that already. But I guess that's the aspect of my life. It would have to be a video game based around racing.
I would say, I think it's pretty easy. I would say I would turn back the clock a bit. I would take time. You know what I'm saying? If I could control that, I would go backwards a bit and he'll be 18 years old again. I'd be Marseille's present age and kind of rewind the clock sometimes, start over.
Oh, that's difficult. I was trying to think while O was speaking.
I was trying to give a sister a minute to think because I knew you were going to need it.
Yeah, for real. Oof. I guess I would say I would do out of the ordinary things and not like certain jobs or any of that. But I would say, how you jump really high in games or you can fly or just speed or like snap your fingers and be somewhere. It could probably be that. Snap my fingers and then I'll be somewhere. I think that could be like my video game power because they do that in GTA or something. Like next you snap and you're at a totally different location.
Okay, a little Bewitch action. I feel you.
It's interesting. Both of us said movement.
Yeah, I think
movement, like right, time backwards, time forward, like it's
I would say that because traveling is crazy. So I think that would take a lot of my time. Yeah, stress time. Yeah.
Navigating what I want to do next, like being decisive. Like I have that power, but it's hard for me to use. Like we all have that, but I would like to be able to control that better, like being more specific about what I want to do.
Kelly.
I'm stumped. I'm sitting up here like, ooh, like a part that I could, my superpower would be to clone myself. Because I think as a woman, I think as a man or woman, but for me, I miss my kids when I'm away. And sometimes, my son will say, well, this happened at school or this other parent was there. And my mom guilt will definitely kick in, although I'm working and, he knows that. And the home he stays in, his school that he goes to, the clothes on his back, the food in the refrigerator, the water he drinks and everything, shows for itself. It's great. He's living a good life, but it's like, I still wish I was there with him. There are other things that I'd like to get done even faster. So I probably clone myself.
So from both of you, I'd love to know who you never stop rooting for.
To be honest, any of my family. Because of the fact that I think that in family, you know, you have sometimes these hiccups, the relationship hiccups, and they suck. They really, really suck. And I think that sometimes we will hold people on such a high pedestal that when they do fall from grace, we forget that they are human. And you have to allow them grace and space to see themselves. And sometimes when they see themselves, they're able to talk to you about possibly what happened, or you're able to come to some sort of hopefully resolve in that way. And I think that I never stop rooting for my family. We might have our moments, but I think that when we talk and we're able to allow each other this space, yeah, we can continue to root for each other always.
I love that. Look at you being a little black angel. I love you for that. Come on, Rome. Bring it on home.
Just like how we wrote it up together.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm gonna say what she said. You know, we worked this out earlier. Myself, I'm trying to maintain that. That's so hard because it's easy to root for our families, right? Because we see them in a perspective they don't see themselves. But I'm trying to practice that for myself.
That's good.
You know, because I'm like, we put ourselves through so much because we have so high expectations for ourselves, and when we don't meet those things, even if people don't know about the expectations, we do ourselves. And so then we have to deal with that and sit with it and, you know, try to navigate what it means when we feel like we come up short. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to operate in a space of like, keep supporting myself, but it's kind of like out of body experience to try to do that. It's kind of hard to do, but just trying to remind myself and be mindful.
Of course, I'm a teenager, so you go through the ups and downs with the family, your immediate family, the people that are living in your household every day. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're my blood, they're my people, and they know me better than I know myself sometimes. And I believe that, you know, we are put on this earth with people that support you, whether that's your family, your friends you call family, or whoever. So those are definitely my parents for me. I always root for them.
I love that. Amari?
I would say, you know, first and foremost, once you become a parent, you got to say kids. So Nova and Brave for sure. And obviously they're incredibly strong and dubious fellow St. Louis to you, mom of theirs, Jay Bird.
Yes.
And then to Marseille's point, you know, Joyce and Clifford Hardwick, the two that are responsible for so much that I've become and I am. My mom and papa, who raised me right here in Atlanta, where we are talking to you from an undisclosed spot somewhere in ATL. But yeah, mom and pops, always rooting for them. My siblings too, but the two people who gave me life and those two that I gave life to with the help of Jay.
I root for my family. I root for my wife, Dominique, my son, Kyle, and my daughter, Ava, you know, all the time. That's what we want. I mean, that's what this film is really about, family. And at the end of the day, no matter what or where or what's going on or what isn't going on, you know, the bottom line is that we have each other and that you got to stand there and support each other through everything. And, you know, and that should be enough. That should be enough, you know, your friends and your family. So that's what it's all about.
And last but not least, do you play fantasy football? And who's your favorite fantasy football team? I know you play. I know you do.
So I am not in a fantasy football league myself, you know, but I will say real life, let's go Rams. You know, I got to give a shout out to the Falcons as well, because, you know, they opened their arms to us and allowed us into their home. And also too, I live in Los Angeles, but I also have some property here in Atlanta. So but, you know, hometown is the LA Rams, but I'm going to take the Falcons as a secondary home. So.
I love that. Please give Jay a hug for me. And I just want to spend this last bit of my time saying this to you, Marseille. I know that in the film, they refer to you as the LeBron of robotics, but you're the LeBron of producing, baby, because you have got it on lockdown since you were in the single digits. So congratulations on that. Congratulations on your 8 seasons of Blackish. Omari, I know I'm going to see you soon, but I just wanted to take the time to give props where props are due for both of you. And thank you for giving me your time today. I appreciate you.
We receive it. Very
Thank you
humble.
so much.
And
Yes.
keep dropping those gems that you do.
Yes,
We appreciate
pleasure.
you.
We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye now.
Peace.
Bye.
How sweet were all of them? Let's give it up. Let's give it up for Anton Cropper, the director. Let's give it up for producer, actress extraordinaire Marseille Martin, Omari Hardwick, Kelly Rowland, and Rome Neal, who are in Fantasy Football, which is dropping on Paramount Plus on November 25th. I feel like I have been holding my breath and I'm like this. I know it's super, super long, but we're in the home stretch. So now, Strange World. Strange World is produced by Disney. It is directed by Don Hall, Queen Gwen, and Roy Conley. Roy Conley does a lot of stuff for Disney Nature. I saw a film that he did called Polar Bear. Amazing. Anyway, it's also starring Dennis Quaid, Gabrielle Union, Jake Gyllenhaal, Jabuki Young White, among others. I had an opportunity to speak with all of those people, and so I did a comp interview with all of them that I'm going to play for you right now, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the film when we come back. Hey, Jeanette, thank you. Carla Renata, the Curvy Film Critic.
Hi.
Hey, you guys.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I have a question for you. Stick with me because this is I'm gonna go around the barn before I get to the front door. Just hold on for a second. All right. So last night I saw Death of a Salesman in New York City, right? And I saw it right after I saw Strange Worlds. And I couldn't help thinking about the father-son relationship and the correlation of it. Now, the one in Strange Worlds is not as intense, it's a little more comical than what's going on in Death of a Salesman. But it reminded me about how complicated yet inspiring these relationships can be to one another, a father and a son. Would y'all agree with that or would you disagree? I'll start with ladies first, Gabrielle.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I think, Death of a Salesman has been around for, generations and generations. Just like exploring the very complicated, at times, relationship dynamic between fathers and sons, and the general notion that a lot of parents feel like if you don't mimic my path, you will not be seen as good, worthy, deserving, safe, successful. It really does need to be what I determine is the best route for you. And that has been, a tale as old as time. But I think the way we do it in Strange World adds a lot of levity. And then another level, another generation. So it's 3 generations having similar conversations. And you realize that if you don't address it, it becomes a cyclical, issue that just plagues the next generation because you haven't really learned anything. So luckily, our family learns a whole heck of a lot.
I mean, I do hear that the new production of that's incredible, particularly because it's a new incarnation and so different from what that show has seen, and so to me that I can't wait to see it. I hear it's incredible, but I also do think that there's also the aspect of similarities between trying to pass and keep your identity alive, keep the identity of what you made your life worth, and that the next generation carries that on. And if for some reason they're doing something different that somehow, the past generation didn't mean as much, and I think fighting for that somewhere, but then learning that the only way to pass something on is really through love and understanding. That's what Strange World is ultimately about, is being able to see each other as we actually are, not as we want the other person to be. That's where real love in a family thrives.
I would agree that I think part of the joy in all of making Strange World was definitely like examining that relationship of because just naturally as a kid growing up you have natural conflict. That's just the way that you find your independence, and that was one of the joys of making it. Like it was like a huge tool to make comedy from it, but also it's from a place of reality, right? Like I'm a dad and a son, and I fought with both. So
Exactly. You guys have anything to add, Roy?
Yeah, when I was first shown the script and pitched the story by Don and Quee, and there was that 3-generational story of father-son, I'm a sucker for father-son stories, and it's because in the 6th grade I read Death of a Salesman, and it blew me away. This has such a light, adventurous tone comparatively, but at the same time, there's that same dynamic of how, as a son, you have to work it out with your dad, and I love that. I just love those stories.
Me too. What about you, Don?
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole reason for this movie even existing was, I was looking at my sons and thinking about what world they're going to inherit. And what world did I inherit from my dad, who's a farmer? And so there's so much of this movie that's drawn upon, my own personal story. And what I love about the 3-generational thing is, even though I'm not a grandfather yet, but I identify with each one of these characters on some level, and have been there. And I hope, that's our hope, is that audiences will relate to that too.
I'm sure they will, as I did. And then last but not least, I wanted to know if you guys could explore a strange new world, where would it be and why?
Okay, I've always wanted to go to the Himalayas. I've always wanted to go to Bhutan. And I've read so much about it since I was a little kid. It's just been kind of a bucket list thing. So I would love to go visit Bhutan.
Cool. Roy?
I'm actually going to fulfill a dream. I'm going to Antarctica in February. So I'm kind of excited about that. Wow. Because it's a world that I've never even imagined going to. So I'm very lucky.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And last but not least, Kui?
I want to go not with the actual location, but time. I would actually go back in time and visit Vietnam and see my parents as young, teenagers and see, them in their punk rock age,
Svalbard was a strange world. It's 400 miles from the North Pole. It's the northernmost airport in the world, and it was really odd. It was a different sky, different light. It was 800 people and 3,000 polar bears, to be exact.
3,000 polar bears?
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Dennis has been everywhere.
Not everywhere, but
I've
been some places.
Yeah. I would love to go to the North Pole, not too far from there. I would love to. I personally love the cold. I know it's controversial. It's a hot take, but I do love the cold.
That is a hot take because, we usually not associated with the cold.
Yeah.
So let's get that.
It is something else up there.
For obvious reasons. And with crafting your characters for this film, was there a lot of improv involved, or were you guys pretty much, set to the script?
We were allowed improv.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they would use it. But they gave us a lot of freedom within it because we have a lot of takes, we're recording stuff. So it's like, why not?
Yeah. I always just love going. I'm like, can I do 3 this way and then just do whatever comes in the moment? Because even if it ends up not being used, it'll inform something later, or it just gives you a more well-rounded view of the character. I find that it always ends up being useful in some way or another.
Now, each generation thinks that they know more than the one before. Were you guys that kid in your family, or are your kids that way?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought I knew it, but I also thought I knew it at 15, 16. You couldn't tell me a thing. I thought everyone was so stupid. Oh my God. And now that I'm a parent, I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't know diddly. And I look at our kids who think that we're dingbats and we couldn't possibly know. We couldn't possibly understand. We're like, oh, just you wait, baby. Just you wait. Just you wait. Yeah, I think every generation kind of feels they have all of the answers and that their parents couldn't possibly know anything.
Of course. Jake, were you that person in your family?
Was I? I don't know. I have such incredibly powerful people in my family. They're very, very, very strong energy. So, a lot of my time was, particularly with my older sister, kind of worshiping, her in a lot of ways. She's so incredible. But There's a great Paul Simon line where he says, "I was born before my children and my father before me." I was right. No, it's born before my father and my children before me. Is what he said, and I think that's an interesting line and the reverse of the idea. And I think so often the knowledge that we learn are from the younger generations, and I certainly do with my nieces like all the time. I'm humbled by it. So maybe I did at some point, but I don't know.
I'm going to ask Maggie, and we'll get back to you. We're going to be like,
you going to get back to me? Okay, you're going to circle back. All right.
No, I could probably answer that for you right now.
Well, y'all, that is my time. Thank you so much for giving me such introspective answers to my crazy questions. I love and adore both of you. Love your work, and I'm so happy I had an opportunity to talk to you about this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure to speak to you, and I love the movie.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, y'all. That is Strange World. Oh, sorry. Last drama. Strange World. It is coming to Disney Plus, I believe, on in 2 days, November 23rd. So let's recap, shall we? Fantasy Football, directed by Anton Cropper, produced by Miss Marseille Martin, and streaming on Paramount Plus on November 25th. I just recapped Strange World for you. Disney Plus is now streaming Zootopia Plus, 6 8-minute mini episodes, which will have you rolling on the floor. Listen, I've watched it on repeat 3 times already. It just, when I need to just giggle, I just go watch Zootopia Plus on Disney Plus because it's hilarious. The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rolla Potts, produced by award-winning journalist Soledad O'Brien, directed by Joanna Hamilton and Yoruba Richin, written by Jean Theo Harris, is streaming on Peacock. It was nominated for a Critics' Choice Documentary Award. Mickey, the Story of a Mouse, is streaming on Disney Plus. It is directed by Jeff Malmberg, who I will be talking to sooner than later. And this interview featured introspective from Carmenita Higginbotham and Megan Walsh. Good Night Oppy is in theaters right now, but will be on Amazon Prime Video on November 23rd. It is directed and written by Ryan White. Lamborghini, The Man Behind the Legend, is in theaters. It is produced by Lionsgate and stars Frank Grillo and Mira Sorvino. Devotion will be in theaters by Sony Pictures, starring Jonathan Majors, Christina Jackson, Glenn Powell, Joe Jonas, and Thomas Sadowski, and it is directed by J.D. Dillard. Now, I wanted to show you guys these pictures real quick before we get out of here. This was me at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards. I just wanted to show y'all the pictures because I said I would. That is me on the red carpet. And then this is me with the co-president, Chris Campbell. This is Dawn Porter, who received our Impact Award. I was very heavily involved with making sure that happened, and I was very proud to see that go down. I went to the Swiss consulate in New York while I was there, and I met this lovely journalist, Miss Sue, who works at the New Yorker. This is me and Dawn after. This is me and Dawn after she won her award. This is that musical Anne Juliet that I was telling you guys about that I'm super excited about. This is the director of the Sinead O'Connor documentary, Nothing Compares, Miss Catherine. I ran into her at the Doc Awards. She called me and I was like, hey girl, let's take a selfie. And then these young ladies I ran into after screening Women Talking. One of them is Anju Moon, who is the director of the Helen Reddy film that I talked about last year. And this young lady is in another film. I'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. I'm just going to let you guess who she is for now. And then, like I said, I went to see Death of a Salesman with my boy, Wendell Pierce, who is freaking crushing it all day long. Next week, I am not going to be here because it is the holiday weekend. And I think I have something going on November 28th. I think I might be flying or something. I'm going to be in St. Louis. So I'm not going to broadcast. I may tape something early and put it up, but I will let you guys know. So keep your eyes peeled on my YouTube channel, my Twitter, if Twitter is still happening, and my Instagram for news on that front. But when I do come back, probably if I do a pre-tape, I'm going to do a pre-tape interview with Diane Warren, who you see in the middle there, alongside Michael J. Fox and Yuzan Palsy, who all received the Governor's Award Oscars last evening. So that is what I'll be doing when I come back. And I'll also be talking about The Whale, Empire of Light, Emancipation, and Violent Night. The reason I will not be here on December 4th is I will be flying on that day too. So I will be out of town on November 28th. I will be flying out of the country on December 4th. So I will not be here. But I thank y'all for hanging in there. This was a long one. I think this is probably the longest one I've ever done. I really thank y'all for hanging in there for this one. But you know, it was some great interviews. I meant to put half of them up last week, but I had food poisoning when I was in New York. So I was kind of under the weather, which explains why everything is so jam-packed for this episode. But thank you so much for hanging in there with me, y'all, and watching. Thank you so much to Brandon, who always pops through. Thanks, Kenneth Williams. Kenneth Williams, like, girl, I need for you to go back on Sunday. I know how you feel. And thank you for that one last comment, Brandon, saying that you love Zootopia Plus and you love the Stu and Bonnie episode where they were chased by the train. Zootopia Plus, I'm saying, it's just my jam, and it's just hella funny all the way around for me personally. So that does it for this episode of The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata, the marathon episode of The Curvy Film Critic with Carla Renata. That does it. Please give me a big thumbs up to let me know that you were here. Wash your hands. Please stay safe. It is flu season. COVID is still out there. It's not as bad as it was 2 years ago, but it's still out there. So I need y'all to be safe and take care of yourselves. If this is your first time joining me, please give me a thumbs up. Click the bell for notifications. If you are on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Look at all the wonderful interviews you get to see when you come through here. I love bringing them to you, and I love talking about movies. All of the written versions of every single film that I talked about will be up in the next couple of days, definitely before they drop, in addition to some other ones that I'm grossly behind on. And that is it. So until the next time, love, peace, and hair grease. Deuces, and I'll see y'all on the flip side, baby.